Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing today? Happy Friday. Welcome to Peter's Movie Club. Okay, so this last week's movie was so good. I forgot how much I loved this movie. It was one of my mom's favorite movies. It's one of my favorite movies of life, and I totally forgot how much I loved this movie. And watching this movie actually helped me decide what the movie was going to be for this week, which is a movie that I knew that I was going to do this month, but I didn't know when. And watching the movie Trip to Bountiful, which was last week's movie, I was like, okay, no. Like, there was an end scene, and if you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about it in just a second. But at the end of the movie, there was a scene, and the scene made me, like, it assured for me what movie I should pick for this week. So, last week's movie was the Trip to Bountiful with Geraldine Page. It's based on a Horton Foote movie, and it was so interesting because when I got done with it, I watched Geraldine Page's acceptance speech because she won an Academy Award for Best Leading Actress in a movie, and I went and watched it because I can remember my mom and I sitting right here in this condo watching the Academy Awards that year, and watching Geraldine Page accept her Academy Award for the Trip to Bountiful, and I could totally remember it, like her coming up on stage and stuff. What I didn't remember, all right, was how many fantastic movies came out that year. And so she was nominated. She was one of 5 that was nominated for Best Actress. Let me see if I can remember them because I just watched this last night. So it was let me see. I'm not going to remember these. All these movies were so good. Okay, it was Jessica Lange in Sweet Dreams, which is one of my favorite movies of life. It was Whoopi Goldberg in The Color Purple, which is one of my favorite movies of life. It was, what were the other ones? Why can't I remember now? That's 3. I just need 2 more. What were the other 2? Oh, God, why can't I remember this? They were all, it was Meryl Streep in Out of Africa, which is like one of my favorite movies of life. All of these were like me and my mom's favorite movies. We love these movies so much. And now why can't I remember who the other person is? All of the movies were like so, I was like, I cannot believe that this was such a phenomenal year for Best Leading Actresses in, a major motion picture. So what an exciting year, that all those movies were out. And that this small movie, Trip to Bountiful, with Geraldine Page, won, this award. And so I watched that last night. I got very, very teary-eyed watching the movie, and I got very, very teary-eyed watching the Academy Awards. It's a movie that really reminds me of my mom. If you didn't watch it, it's still up on Tubi. It's not leaving anytime soon, so you can still watch it. I took a picture while I was watching it. I watched it out here last night, and I took a picture and I put it on my Instagram. And I just have to tell you how many people DM'd me and said, "What movie is this?" I was like, "This is the movie for this week's Peter's Movie Club. It's Trip to Bountiful." And so many people were like, "Is this Mom, Paul Kettle?" and stuff like that. And I was like, "No, this is Trip to Bountiful with Geraldine Page." But it was so funny that so many people messaged me and they didn't know what the movie was. But anyway, this is not a movie that you want to miss. So if you don't know what the movie is about Carrie Watts, who is played by Geraldine Page, and I think it takes place like in the 40s in Houston, Texas, and she lives in a 2-room apartment with her son, who is John Hurd, and his wife, Carlin Glenn. They are fantastic in the movie, and it is her dream that before she dies, she goes back to the town that she grew up in, which is Bountiful, Texas, and that's like been her dream for a long time, and she doesn't really get along with her daughter-in-law, Carlin Glenn, very well. She always, she sings hymns, and her daughter-in-law, Jessie May, is like, no hymn singing, and then she'll run, and because she has like a bad heart, she'll say, no running, walk in the house, and stuff like that. And so she feels like she's very controlled by this daughter-in-law. Her daughter-in-law wants her pension check and things like that. And so her daughter-in-law leaves after she has this sinking spell because of her heart. And so she leaves to go to the drugstore to have Coca-Cola and get her hair done. And she sneaks out and she runs away to go back to her hometown of Bountiful, Texas. And she goes by way of bus. And on the way there, she meets, why can I remember this one's name? Well, anyway, it's the girl that, well, she's older than me, I think, but let's look up Trip to Bountiful really quick and I can tell you what her name is. Well, it's Rebecca De Mornay. I don't know how I forgot that. But anyway, Rebecca De Mornay, who is in Risky Business. And if you want to see what a fantastic actress she is, somebody said something about Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I had forgotten about that she was in that movie, but she is such a fantastic actress. And in this movie, she plays, I mean, if you ever watch Risky Business, she plays the prostitute that Tom Cruise falls in love with. And in this movie, she plays a woman who is been married for a year, and her husband is sent overseas in the service. And so she's going back to her parents to go live with them while he's overseas. And Carrie Watts, Geraldine Page, meets her on the bus, and so they have a very spiritual conversation. They have a conversation about love. Geraldine Page says that she never loved her husband, that she admired him, but she didn't love him, and that he knew that. And she talked about the man that she was always in love with, and that their dads didn't get along. It's such a great movie, and it takes place all throughout the night because she's traveling that night. And then she gets to, there's no trains or buses that run to the town of Bountiful, Texas anymore, so she stops in this town called Harrison, which is a 12-mile drive to Bountiful, Texas. And at that point, her son's already contacted the police, and so he's coming the next morning to come and get her. And she feels very defeated. She's like, now I'm never going to get to go see my home one last time. And the sheriff, who is just fantastic in the movie, the next morning, the doctor comes out to check her to make sure she's okay because she's had another sinking spell. And so he checks her, and he drives her out to Bountiful to go see the home that she grew up in. I literally, like, sobbed watching this movie last night, you guys. I totally forgot how much I loved this movie. And so she goes back, and her dearest girl, her friend that she was friends with her entire life, had died like the day before, 2 days before, something like that, riding her tractor the day before she died. And her friend Callie. And so she goes out and she sees her home that she grew up in, and she says to the sheriff, she says, I feel like my mom and my dad should be, like, walking out here to greet me and give me a hug and stuff. And so finally her son comes and his wife, and so she's, like, you know, telling memories with her son and things like that about what it was like to live in the house and what he remembers. And he says something, he finally says, I remember all of it. And it's like, basically, it's too painful. I don't want to remember those things. It's too painful to remember what it was like. And he says, I should have brought you back here a long time ago. This is where when people say things like, you know, like, I don't have any regrets, or I don't live with regrets. For me, I'm not that person. Like, there's a lot of things, even on a small level like that, things I wish that I would have done for my mom when she was still alive. Things, you know, she always wanted to go to this antique place, you know, in the town that her dad was from. And I always said, oh, we'll go next summer, And then next summer never came because she passed away. And, you know, those are regrets that I have. I wish I had done those things for my mom. It would have made her, just to make her happy, you know, like, I think those simple things in life. And so she's sitting out there on the porch, and then they have this confrontation with her daughter-in-law that has all these rules set down, that she agrees to all these rules. And then he says, no more fighting. I don't want you two to fight anymore. And she says in there, she says, her daughter-in-law looks at her and says, are you okay now? She goes, I'm fine. I've had my trip. She got her trip. You know, she wanted to see her home one last time before she died. And so her son and his wife go to the car, and she's sitting in the grass, and all she wanted to do was get her hands in the ground. She's like, if I could just get my hands in the ground, I know I could live to be 100. And so she puts this dirt in her hands, and she kind of looks back at the house, and she stands up. This was the picture I put on Instagram last night. And she stands up, and as she's walking away, the last lines of the movie are, she looks back at her house, and then she keeps on walking, and she says, goodbye, Bountiful, goodbye. And I think just knowing, you know, like, this is all she ever wanted, was just to be back at her home just one last time before she passed away. And now she's seen it, you know, and then, you know, she says to her son, she says, you know, in a few years, like, this house won't be here, and I won't be here, and you won't be here, you know. And it's like, what exists but the memories? You know, the memories are what exists. The stories are what exist. I love that, you know. It's why I'm such a big storyteller of my past, you know, and I think it's important to continue to share those stories so that people continue to live, you know, and people continue to live through the stories and the memories. And this is just such a fantastic movie. And this was a movie that when I got done with it, I was like, I could watch this 10 more times in my life, and I would never be satisfied. Like, it's so good. It's such a great movie. Not too long either. It was an hour and 47 minutes, so it was good. So towards the end of the movie, there is a scene when she and the sheriff are sitting on the front porch of her house, and she hears a bird, and the bird is, like, singing, and she says, what kind of bird is that? And he says, it's a red bird, which is so bizarre because the state bird of Indiana is the cardinal, and I live in Indiana. And my mom, before she passed away, on our last conversation that we had, she said if she came back, she would come back in the form of a red bird, because my mom loved red birds. Later, when I told my dad that, he said, it's interesting that your mom picked the state bird of Indiana. You're going to see your mom all over the place, right? And still to this day, when I see cardinals and red birds, I think of my mom. So many people have sent me things that are cardinals, red birds, sayings. People have sent me that stuff through the years because people know that, and I'm so grateful and appreciative of it. And so she says, what is that bird? And he says, it's a red bird. And she goes something about she loves a red bird, and then she says something about a scissor tail, and she's like, there's nothing better than seeing a scissor tail like fly through the air, right? Like on a blue summer day. And then she said, do you still have scissor tails? And he said, yeah, I still see them when I'm driving through the country. And so she starts going through these birds, and she says all these birds that she loves, and talking about this and talking about that. And she says that something like a red bird I think might be my favorite. She goes, but I'm mighty partial to a scissor tail. It's just such a sweet moment of hers. You know, she's so fantastic in this role. The facial features, everything that she does are just so unbelievable. But she says, I'm mighty partial to a scissor tail. But I didn't really know what movie to pick for this week. I'm very deliberately picking favorite movies of mine that have had a huge impact on my life this month for my birthday. And in their discussion about birds, she talks about, why am I so emotional today? My cousin and I were talking a lot about our moms today. I think that's part of it. There's this like spider coming right down in front of me. But in there, and talking about birds, she's talking about mockingbirds. And To Kill a Mockingbird is my all-time favorite movie of life. Absolutely my all-time favorite movie of life and book. And I knew that I wanted to pick it for this month. And I was going to pick it for the week of my birthday. My birthday is the 29th. And so I think that Friday is the 28th or something. I was going to pick it for that upcoming week. I'm really afraid it's going to leave Tubi before I pick it. And so many people have messaged me and been like, To Kill a Mockingbird, because everybody knows that that's my favorite movie. My mom and I watched it the beginning of every summer and every fall, and it has a lot of fall scenes in it, a lot of summer scenes. It's about Scout and Jim, these two kids that grow up, and Dill comes and visits them, who is really Truman Capote. Scout was Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, and Truman Capote would come and visit them in the summers to his aunt's house, and so she made the character of Dill after Truman Capote. But I've read the book many, many times in my life, and I still love the book. The book is much different than the movie. The movie really just takes the kids. There's a lot of stuff in the book that happens, like they play act out different, like these religious scenes and Christian revivals and stuff. None of that's in the movie. The movie is very much about, well, let me read the synopsis to you if you have not read or seen the movie To Kill a Mockingbird. I will tell you this, it's very rare that I read a book, and I think the first time I read this book was in 6th grade. It's very rare that I read a book and I like the movie better. I would say probably in my life that's only happened maybe 2 or 3 times. This is a movie that I like better than the book. And I know that that's so bizarre saying, you know, when people say, you know, what they say about To Kill a Mockingbird. And Mary Badham, that plays Scout in it, she still goes around and speaks to universities about To Kill a Mockingbird to this day. And she to me is the epitome of Jean Louise Finch, of Scout. So the movie came out in 1962. And Academy Award for Best Actor in a Leading Role. What other Academy Awards did it win? Academy Award for Best Writing, Golden Globes, Art Direction, on and on and on. Okay, so Scout Finch, played by Mary Badham, 6, and her older brother Jim, played by Philip Alford, live in a sleepy Macomb, Alabama, spending much of their time with their friend Dill, and spying on the repulsive and mysterious neighbor, Boo Radley, played by Robert Duvall. This is his very first role. When Atticus, played by Gregory Peck, their widowed father and a respected lawyer, defends a black man named Tom Robinson, played by Brock Peters, against fabricated rape charges, the trial and tangent events expose the children to evils of racism and stereotyping. And to this day, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. I probably learned more about life from this movie. The book is fantastic, obviously. I love the book. And I've also read Go Set a Watchman, and a lot of people had a lot of issues with it. It's interesting to hear Mary Badham, who played Scout, and she was, you know, very good friends with, like, you know, Gregory Peck through the years, and, you know, has really looked into the life of Atticus Finch and things like that. And it's interesting to hear her speak about Go Set a Watchman, which some people call the sequel to Kill a Mockingbird. Harper Lee really never wanted Go Set a Watchman to be published. It's interesting reading it, and Go Set a Watchman is Jean Louise, Scout, grown up, and everything that's happened to her since, and you find out, like, in the first 5 pages where Jim is and where Dill is and things like that, and she visits with Calpurnia, and it's very much about looking at her father Atticus in a completely different way. A lot of people really had issues with that book because of how it presents Atticus in this book. And to hear her speak about it is really interesting. Like, I felt a certain way about the book, and then I heard Mary Badham speak about it and explain it a little bit. And I was like, you know what? I never really understood it that way. I think one of the interesting things about this movie coming out is that it came out in 1962, but the book is actually a book that takes place in the 40s when you read the book. And so I think the book came out in like 59 or 60 or something like that, 61. So it was a book that came out then, you know, during the, you know, middle of the Civil Rights Movement and things like that, or the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, but it had been written 20 years before. I believe that To Kill a Mockingbird to this day still stands the test of time. I learned so much about, you know, like, you know, Atticus says in there, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird when all a mockingbird does is provide enjoyment with their song for the world, you know, and about, you know, you never really understand somebody until you walk on their front porch in their shoes for a while and things like that. That's not his exact quote. The scenes with Scout where, you know, she makes fun of the kid that comes over to eat lunch with him because he's putting syrup over everything, and understanding, you know, financial struggles, racial struggles, and things like that. It's fantastic. The movie is fantastic. And so, I think some of the proudest parts of myself, of who I am today, in some weird way, are kind of directly related to this movie, or my mom explaining parts of that movie to me when I was a kid, and I'm forever grateful for this movie. It's my favorite movie of life. I could watch it 9 million times, and so I was going to wait until my birthday, but this week's movie is To Kill a Mockingbird, so, yeah, enjoy it if you've never seen it before. I think it's a great movie. I think it's, I started watching this movie very, very young. I will say this, like, I started watching it, like, you know, like I said, it has, you know, issues of racism and SA and things like that they imply through this court case. I can remember watching it with my mom when I was young, but my mom and I having conversations afterwards of her explaining things to me. So, I definitely think that it's a movie that it requires that if you're going to have, you know, watch it with your kids. It's not a family movie. I mean, it's not. So anyway, I'm very, very excited about it. And it was kind of a decision I made late last night when I was watching Trip to Bountiful. I had an entirely different movie picked for this week. So anyway, I hope that you will watch with me. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.